Smithfield or industrial site? Are we willing to gamble with the consequences of possible soil and water runoff, which could affect surrounding properties? Will you be visiting their solar installation in Richmond to evaluate the problems that have developed there? Or will you be speaking to their town officials? Can this dramatic site clearing and possible leveling really avoid degrading the streams and wetlands on this property? Has the DEM been involved in surveying the site to determine its suitability for this solar installation? Wouldn't it be the best practice to evaluate these solar installations on a parcel-by-parcel basis, and then, if acceptable, issue a variance when they exceed our existing solar ordinance? If you decide to pursue an overlay district, can the size of the district be dramatically reduced? Or could installation be required in phases? Is the monetary donation to the town adequate to compensate for the enormous acreage that would be cleared? When National Grid destroys wetlands during their expansion, they purchase an equivalent amount of open space to offset their destruction. Solar technology is advancing at a steady pace now. Will this installation be archaic well before 25 years is up? In hindsight, we may have sacrificed 150 to 200 acres of forest for an old technology. And finally, we especially believe that the go slow approach to incorporating solar arrays into our community will be the best to our advantage in the end. Choosing their locations wisely is key. And I'll say that again. Choosing their locations wisely is key. And it will reap the greatest benefit while minimizing the negative effects. Thank you for letting us comment.
Thank you. We appreciate the Conservation Commission's comments. In response, so there's a couple of items we'd like to touch upon. We are working on a single site in South Kingstown right now that is a landfill. It's closely affiliated with a landfill. It's directly across the street and has environmental land use restriction on it. Unfortunately, those sites are more challenging to develop and they're significantly more expensive. So what ends up happening is that they just do not become cost competitive with other sites in the state. So what happens is a lot of times people end up starting to develop them and then it ends up that they get delayed or held up because they're just not as competitive. So there are statewide proceedings right now with different environmental groups that are focused on this exact issue, looking at citing renewable energy on alternative sites, and the state OER has been involved in that, the Office of Energy Resources. And hopefully what comes out of that is a program that allows for development on those types of properties, because we absolutely agree that that's a great use for that type of property. In addition to that, the parcel-by-parcel approach, it does make sense. The challenge is that, parcels are owned individually by landowners, and landowners aren't really making decisions about, do I want to do renewables or do I want to do nothing? They're making decisions about, how do I want to develop my land? So it's, in theory, it makes sense, and we agree with it, and we would like to go with that approach, but in practice, it's harder to implement. We are trying to take steps. I think we mentioned the fencing, the wildlife corridors and habitats, and then the pollinator-friendly plantings that we intend to utilize on these properties. Honeybees are an area right now that everyone's struggling with. How do we get honeybees back? This is one area that, solar has great potential because we need low-growth habitat below it. So our plan is to plant low-growth, pollinator-friendly habitat, not use herbicides, not use pesticides, really make it as natural as possible for those types of species. It is a different use, but I think to the member from the zoning board's opinion, it goes back to what was there before. It was farmland. Now it's essentially pasture underneath the solar panels. The other piece we wanted to touch upon was, part of our proposal to the town did offer a significant financial upfront payment that the town could use if it so choose for, offsetting some other land. Purchasing land elsewhere, keeping it in conservation, something to that effect. And then the final comment that we'll add is, you made a comment about National Grid and their efforts in terms of transmission lines. Installing distributed generation, such as projects like this, actually reduce the need for transmission over time. And transmission over time, covers much wider territories and could have even more detrimental effects because they may get, waivers from certain environmental considerations that, we would not get if we were to go to DEM or others like that. So, thank you.
Connie Hurd.
Take me a moment.
It's all right. Anytime.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Cornelia Hurd. I live at 247 Greenville Road, adjoining Todd's Pond. I have lived in the house that my husband built on land that was in his family since 1660. He was the 12th generation on the same piece of land, and I've lived there for 54 years. I am concerned about several issues regarding Whortleberry Hill. Whortleberry Hill means Blueberry Hill. You remember the song, Once Upon a Time, I Met My Love on Blueberry Hill, I think it was. Well, we moved there not only because of the sentimental value of the land, but because the Primrose area has always been a lovely rural area to live in. We have seen the zoning change from rural agricultural to residential agricultural. Now, I see in the Valley Breeze that I live in an overlay district. I don't know what that means. It's on both sides of Greenville Road. What does that mean for me where my house is located? My husband passed away 4 years ago, and I'm here to speak for him as well. I don't know if it means that the zoning will be changed to manufacturing. Isn't that what a solar farm is, a manufacturing area? And if I'm in an overlay zone, is that going to be changed to manufacturing? I don't know. I'd like some answers. And how is that going to affect my housing value? The other major concern is Whortleberry Hill is a watershed. We have known that, but many people choose to ignore that fact. My former 4th grade students could have explained to you what a watershed area is. Now, we also know Whortleberry Hill has a very steep grade. Those trees that are going to be clear-cut out of perhaps 200 acres are necessary. My 4th graders would tell you the importance of trees. A kindergartner could tell you the importance of trees, never mind 200 acres of trees that are proposed to be cut. We know the trees clean the air, right? The roots hold the soil in place. Look at the grade of Whortleberry Hill. When we have heavy rains, are we going to have mudslides coming down? The area is going to be clear-cut. Now, I did hear mention, and I hope this is so, that environmentally friendly plants for pollinators will be planted. My concern is, if that isn't done, are they going to apply pesticides to keep it clear under those arrays? Why am I so concerned about this? Because as a watershed, this groundwater seeps in slowly. That's the purpose of trees and roots in a watershed. Instead of having the water rush down, it's absorbed slowly and it's filtered through the soil. And then it's going to feed my well and all the other people's wells in this area. We don't have a water and sewer system, we have wells. What is that going to do with the quality of my water? Those are questions that I want answered. Now, I know that there are people, investors, who purchase land on Waterbury Hill. They want to make a profit. We've been fighting this. How many hearings have we gone to? I've lived in town 54 years. We've gone about the gravel pits, the clear-cut cutting for house lots, hazardous waste sites. We're always fighting something. And what I don't understand, for people who are not familiar, Waterbury Hill and Sales Hill is where our town started. That's history. It's not Slatersville. That was the start of the Industrial Revolution in manufacturing and mills. Our town started from Sales Hill Road over Waterbury Hill Road. Roger Morey came over with his friend Roger Williams to Providence and then purchased the Morey Inn and land deed. Why don't we have Waterbury Hill as open space? It never was farmland as such. It was too rocky and hilly. The soil was poor. It was pasture land. Maybe some people remember the Carpenter Dairy Farm. Cows roamed through there. But it was never rich farmland as such. But boy, there are a lot of trails up there. There's an old blacksmith shop, foundation up there. There's history on that hill. We're talking about the other side of town all the time. Why don't we talk about open space right here where our town began? And why don't we preserve that Waterbury Hill for open space? Why does it have to be developed? Because there are people who bought land for investment and they want to make a profit. I would say that I need a drink of water. I can't talk. When I hear solar farms or solar arrays, I'm usually in favor of it. Thank you. That's a good alternative source of energy. It's not using fossil fuels, right? But what about the scope of the project? It was already mentioned on top of manufacturing rooftops, the mills that have been abandoned, hazardous waste sites. You don't cut down 200 acres of trees. Where's this environmentally sound? We're saying that we put solar farms in because it's a good alternative and it's good for the environment. How is cutting 200 acres of trees environmentally sound? It doesn't make sense to me. Well, I hope that you'll consider the scope of the project and the location of the project. Waterbury Hill is not the best place to be clearing 200 acres of trees. And I want to know the ramifications to my zoning, to my well water, and to my quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Soares.
Good evening, Paul Soares, Sales Hill Road. so many issues here that one almost doesn't know where to begin. But I do have a couple of things I'd like clarified. How many acres are we talking about clear cutting? Is it 200? Mr. Mancini?
It's still the process.
In the process. It's fluid, so it could be 100, it could be 500. You don't want to commit. Right.
Yep.
All right. I agree with Mr. Rapko. The overlay district is painting with too broad a brush. It's not necessary. What we have here is a developer who's obviously trying to do something for himself, not necessarily for us, the town. I don't understand why a developer can present an ordinance to the town where he can bypass zoning issues, where he doesn't have to get a special use permit or a variance. When, as an example, right now there's another energy company that wants to build a solar farm in town, Turning Point Energy, Colorado company, with a good reputation, I might add. They want to put up a 40-acre array near a Superfund site at Poundville Road and Oxford Road. They're not asking for an overlay district. They're going to go through the process. They're going to get the variance and a special use permit. I don't see why anyone should be exempted from that. I agree with the lady that just spoke. This overlay district encompasses residential areas. I think that's outrageous. And her mention of trees. Let me give you some facts. You're talking about cutting down 200 acres of trees. I have here a study conducted by Cornell University. It tells you that a mature forest sequesters 30,000 pounds of carbon dioxide per acre and emits 22,000 pounds of oxygen per acre. So multiply that times 200 acres. Those trees that will be eliminated remove 6 million pounds of CO2 annually and emit 4,400,000 pounds of oxygen. So you're going to replace that with a solar farm that's going to give you 40 megawatts of electricity. The young lady spoke and said that was going to supply 13,000 homes. Well, I've got something here from the Solar Energy Industries Association that says 1 megawatt will supply 164 homes. So you extend that to 40 megawatts and you've got 6,560. Half of what we're being told. What else is not true? I have other questions. Will there be blasting? Are there going to be measures in place to control water runoff and erosion? Are streams, ponds, and wetlands going to be protected using best practices? I think somebody touched on this, but in all honesty, sitting back there, I can't hear every word that's been spoken. So will the developer be responsible for removal of the infrastructure at the end of its life expectancy? And what guarantee will be provided? What happens if the company goes belly up? The town ends up on the hook for dismantling this? Is there a specific plan for restoration of the land, including tree planting? Will the solar panels be visible from the surrounding residential roads? That includes Greenville, Old Greenville, Iron Mine Hill, Sales Hill, Jefferson, St. Jude, and Prince. I don't know, I'm not crazy about this whole idea. One other very important thing, in my opinion. Again, this proposal is brought to us by a developer. And here we are talking about a town council meeting where you may even vote on it. But there's an important process that I think has been overlooked. We have an ordinance committee in this town. The ordinance committee's responsibility is to write and review ordinances. The ordinance committee is made up of knowledgeable and experienced people, including a member of the zoning board, the planning board,